So when we look at the where water is found in your body, you'll notice that most of it is actually found inside of your cells. So if we have a total body, and this is like 60%, so this would be your typical male, of 40 liters, about 25 liters or 40% of your body weight is the intracellular fluid. Then we have the interstitial fluid, which is surrounding your cells. And then we have the blood plasma, which is about 3 liters here. So 3 liters of blood in your body. Now, it's important to realize that we can have exchanges. So fluid can move between these compartments. So we'll talk about this as fluid movement between compartments. Now, we're talking specifically the movement of water. And so the diffusion of water from a high concentration to a low concentration is referred to as osmosis. So osmosis is the passive diffusion of water from a higher water concentration, a higher concentration to a lower concentration. And the cell plasma membranes are permeable to water. And then you might remember, or we might have learned in the kidney, that the kidney actually is also able to put water channels into the collecting ducts, which allow for water to move in mass in certain situations. Okay, so being passive means that it doesn't require energy and it's diffusion. So what determines how water moves is actually the solute concentration. So we could have, and also the hydrostatic pressure. So when we look at between the plasma and we'll just put interstitial fluid, IF. So we have this occurring at the capillaries. This is where we have exchange. The capillaries tend to be leaky. And so we have hydrostatic pressure, which is from your blood being pumped by the heart. And this forces water out of the capillary. So that is another thing that causes, in this case, the exchange of water from one compartment to another is that pressure. So when we talk about going the opposite way, so this is being forced out, the IF can also, the fluid surrounding your cells can also be tucking back up at the other end of the capillary. And this has to do with osmotic pressure. So that's an M, osmotic. Oops, that doesn't look right. This is osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure. This has to do with hydrostatic pressure. So that is the exchange between them. Now, when we're talking about the extracellular fluid, specifically the IF, the interstitial fluid, and the intracellular fluid, we can talk about from the IF to the ICF, and it can actually go both ways, right? So this has to do with the solute concentrations of ions, electrolytes, and non-electrolytes as they change between those compartments. And so water can move back and forth across plasma membranes by osmosis, specifically the diffusion of water. And it depends, that movement of water depends upon the solute concentrations from the interstitial fluid to the ICF. So movement depends on solute concentrations And that is really important because if too much water gets picked up by a cell, say, the cell will swell. And that can be a very bad thing, like swelling of the neurons in your brain, swelling of the brain. That could be a very bad thing. Also, if water is sucked out of the cells will shrink in size. And so we need to regulate the solute concentration. And the way that we do that is through a process called Osmo Regulation. So Osmo Regulation is regulating your water solute balance. So let's say that you are dehydrated. Your solute concentrations would be greater in your interstitial fluid. And so water is going to get sucked out of the cells. So in order to prevent that, your body senses that you are dehydrated and makes you thirsty. And so that thirst is a mechanism to try to regulate those solute concentrations so water doesn't get sucked out of the cells. And so that is really important. It's also important to realize that you can drink too much water and dilute your solutes to the point where we can actually have water moving unnecessarily into the cells, and that can actually lead to coma and to death. So these are the compartments of water and how substances, how water specifically moves between them.